Hello and welcome back to Matchday Matinee, the podcast where we are forever ranking endless movies based on the beautiful game. I'm your host for the day, Adam, and I'm joined as ever by Mark. How are you doing, Mark?
Hello, Adam.
Hello.
Good.
And we have a special guest for today, our first ever special guest, referred to as the other Mark, but we'll call him Mark Hamer. So it's my fellow Laps Gamer podcast host, Mark Hamer. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks so much for having me on.
So, before we get into today's film, guys, we're going to talk about what you're wearing. I will kick off. I tried to find something. I was like, I don't have anything related to Eric Cantona. I absolutely hate the man. Turns out I'm wrong. I have a Marseille shirt that I bought in the early days of lockdown when I was like, I'm going to buy all of the football shirts. And it's last season's away kit. It has an Uber Eats logo on. Along with Amazon, Uber Eats are probably my most second supported local business during the lockdown. So yeah. So guys,
that's not the sorry, is that the sublimated one with the houses on it?
No, not that one. I think that's blue, isn't it? This has got this weird like pattern on the sleeve, like like cheetah but black. It doesn't really come out. But yeah,
that's the one Marseille kit that I want to get.
Yeah, it is nice.
Houses. Yeah.
They did a cool release with Dimitri Payet, I think, was like modeling that on some video or something.
I think so.
But yeah, so what are you guys wearing? Mark Hamer, tell us first.
I am wearing a vintage pre-Mike Ashley Newcastle United shirt. I was born in Gosforth, moved away at a very early age, which is why you can understand the words that are coming out of my mouth. And I decided to wear this. Well, actually, I was going to wear my, in honor of the Euros, I was going to wear my old Netherlands shirt. I got an old Rafael van der Vaart Netherlands shirt, but I can't find it. It's packed away somewhere from I moved house and I can't find it. I looked him up just out of curiosity because I wonder what old Rafael's doing these days since he stopped playing football. What if he's going to management or something like that? And I found out that since 2019, Rafael van der Vaart has been a professional darts player.
Really?
Yeah.
Like doing decent, or
I couldn't find that much about his darts career online, but he's won a few games. I know they're quite big into darts in the Netherlands, but I couldn't find them. So this one, which coincidentally can pop the collar on.
Beauty.
This is a classic. When you think of iconic Newcastle shirts, it's this one, which was like Shearer's, and then I guess there's the other one which had the blue star on it with a time bridge.
Yes. Yeah.
They're like iconic, like of that era, 90s kits. And Mark.
We haven't had a good kit since then.
No, you had a few dodgy ones, didn't you? Like Wonga supported you for a bit.
Yeah, that's right.
NTL, who went bust.
Yeah, Virgin Money.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And then now some betting company, is it?
Yeah, some Chinese betting company, yeah.
Okay. And wearing what I believe is a very snazzy TFC Pride shirt. Is this that one?
It is. It's, I think at the last TFC match I went to, which was June 2019, I picked it up on a whim. And it's kind of quickly became one of my favorite kits. It's the training kit from that month that they had. But yeah, I've worn it everywhere. I've taken it with me to a few vacations now, and it's kind of the perfect breathable material. It's just enough Pride without being kind of in your face, which is the one that they released this year. It was like a multicolored tie-dye, which can't really pair with much unless you want to shout it out. So yeah, it's a beauty of a shirt. Starting to wear out a bit on the sponsor, so heartbreaking a little bit, but it's become one of my favorite TFC kits over a decade now.
Cool. Okay. Well, thanks for indulging me in talking about kits again. I've got more. Despite having thought I'd stopped buying kits now, I bought 2 this week. I'm now into collecting goalkeeper kits, it would seem.
Oh, 90s goalkeeper kits?
Early 2000s I got for Portsmouth, but there is one I'm watching that's early. Bishop, when we used to be sponsored by Bishop's Printers.
Yeah.
So maybe. Okay, guys.
90s keeper kits were they were fire.
Again, Newcastle, iconic Shaka Hislop and Pavel Srnicek. Those goalkeeper kits are amazing.
Yeah.
The Euros are about to kick off, and who can forget what they dressed David Seaman in at Euro 96? Like, both of those kits were
The Schmeichel 92 kit.
Yeah, Schmeichel 92 kit. There was a few. There was all sorts of crazy, which they don't seem to do now. A lot of them are just very boring. Like, here's a bright, luminous color that makes the keeper stand out.
Yeah.
Okay. So without further ado, we'll get into today's film, which is, as I mentioned when I was talking about my kit, it's about Eric Cantona. It is Looking for Eric, which is an introspective and real look at the escape from reality that football and its icons can provide to fans of the beautiful game. So it was released on June 12th, happens to be my birthday, in 2009. A budget of £4 million, and it made £11 million, and it was filmed on location in Manchester. It stars Eric Cantona, Steve Evans, and John Henshaw, who we've previously seen in The Keeper and When Saturday Comes, so he must be close to getting some kind of matchday matinee fellowship award at this point, I think, guys. And Lucy Jo Hudson. It's directed by Ken Loach, who famously directed the movie Kes, who we may revisit one day as it's sort of a football film. And Looking for Eric is considered fresh on Rotten Tomatoes with an 85% rating from Rotten Tomatoes out of 99 reviews. Mark Hamer, we were chatting offline before about how you knew a little bit more about Ken Loach than either of us might. The only other film of his I've watched is Kes.
Yeah.
And that's because my dad loves that film.
I've always had a soft spot for Ken Loach because I'm a bit of a pinko lefty socialist sort. And his films have always been about sort of like downtrodden working class sort of stories in like post-industrial Britain. Mostly, he did one film set in like the Irish Civil War, but on the whole, that's the sort of wheelhouse he works in. He's been very involved in politics. He was a big supporter of Jeremy Corbyn. He's been on Question Time a number of times. I've seen him in a number of debates talking about politics. So I've always been a big fan of him. I've got to say, this is the first one of his films that I've watched that I've actually enjoyed. I love all of his films, but you don't really say like, you know what, I'm really in the mood to watch Kes, or I'm really in the mood to watch I, Daniel Blake, or something like that, because they are relentlessly depressing.
Yeah, even this film kind of benefits from having. How did that happen? That is the first ever time I've done that. Nope, wait.
Still muted. Yeah.
Oh, that's the first ever time I've done that. I don't even know how I managed to do that. I must have called the space bar or something. That's embarrassing. So yeah, I was going to say, this film's somewhat helped by having kind of a lot of comedic actors, but yeah, otherwise it's a pretty depressing story. He doesn't do like straightforward uplifting stories. No. So we're going to get into the plot a bit. I've written a bit of a description again, which goes into some of the details of this film, and then we'll have a more in-depth chat about what each of you guys think. So we meet Eric Bishop, who's driving the wrong way around a roundabout as a result of some trauma, which we'll learn about later. We learn at this point he is a football fanatic postman whose life isn't going too well. He's a single, looking after two stepchildren who've been left with him. His house is in a state of disrepair, and the young lads that he's looking after, Ryan and Jesse, show him no respect. It's pretty clear that Ryan is mixed with a bad crowd, which we later learn is the case of him hiding a gun under the floorboards of the bedroom for a violent drugs baron. We see some footy early on with a great Cantona goal, side footing it into the net against Tottenham, a header against Wimbledon, and a great first touch against Manchester City, amongst others. Looking after his granddaughter brings him back into close contact with his ex-wife Lily, who he abandoned after the birth of his daughter Samantha. After an hilarious meditation session with his fellow postman, in which one of the characters is called Meatballs, tells them that they can all breathe through their arse for all he wants, whilst imagining who they wish to emulate, including people such as Sammy Davis Jr., Fidel Castro, and Nelson Mandela. Eric decides that he most wants to emulate Eric Cantona, the king of football, the best footballer that ever lived. After smoking some weed that he steals from his stepson, hallucinations bring forth his footballing hero, one Eric Cantona, who starts to give him some advice. We find out that his daughter needs him and his ex to coordinate caring for the granddaughter, and that's what led to him going round the roundabout the wrong way. We get some brilliant quotes during some of these scenes from Eric Cantona, include as he battles his inner demons through these metaphysical conversations. We get, I feel like I'm looking down on myself like a fucking scabby dog. Stick your proverbs up your fucking ass. I'm still getting over the seagulls one. So with Eric's help, Eric is able to sustain a new relationship with Lily. He discloses to her that he's been essentially having panic attacks for most of his life. Eric finds the gun and confronts his stepson. Ryan admits to his involvement with the drug gang, and Eric attempts to get the gun back to the drug lord, but this backfires when they lock him in a car and set a Rottweiler on him. This footage ends up on YouTube, and Eric is humiliated. Despite this, they do still manage to have a family dinner, and everything's getting back to somewhat normality. You get the sense that the two stepsons are really starting to engage with Eric as his mental health improves. This lovely scene is broken up as the house is raided by police looking for the gun, but they failed to find it because good old Eric hid it inside a chicken. Cantona then advises Eric Bishop to seek help from his friends and to surprise himself with how far he can go. Eric gets all his mates together down the pub, and they create Operation Cantona, sneaking dozens of Manchester United fans wearing Eric Cantona masks that I thought at one point some of them looked like Tamer Hussein, for people that have ever seen Football Factory. So they go into the gangster's house, wreck his car and furniture, and humiliate him by spraying him with super soakers full of red paint. They threaten to put the whole video onto YouTube, which includes an confession from him that the gun does belong to him. The gun gang gets smashed up on some beautiful Italian paving tiles. The fans get back on the bus, and Meatball yells at one, telling him to hurry up, calling him Cantona. He takes off the mask to reveal it's actual Eric Cantona, making it appear that he was part of the quest. We can talk about that later. The film ends at Sam's graduation day, where family and friends are all present, and Eric's wearing his famous blue suede shoes from the past, and he finally musters up the strength to give Lily a hug. Cantona is not in sight, therefore implying that Eric Bishop is somewhat on the way to mentally recovering from his panic disorder. So guys, that was everything that happens in this movie in a rather long nutshell. I'm going to have a drink whilst one of you tells me what you think about it.
I'll go first. I enjoyed it, like Mark was saying, despite how depressing it was at certain points. It was kind of strange to suddenly shift tone in the third act like it did. It was almost like if you're watching Joker and in the third act, he becomes like the zany Joker from the 90s movie, as opposed to the sociopath that he is in the 2019 version. But aside from that, there was like a really great character journey in it where Eric kind of battles his demons and uses the advice of his friends from the beginning of the movie, which is kind of nice. You don't really see kind of men sitting around and getting in touch with their emotions and feelings in these movies as much as you do overbearing fathers being abusive, right? So to see kind of men in a little circle getting together and kind of giving one of their friends a needed advice, and him actually taking that advice, not directly, but through a weird kind of, I don't know what you would call like that kind of plot device. It's not like an unreliable narrator, but it's
trippy hallucination.
You know what I mean? Yeah, like a Tyler Durden type character. It was cool to see that. And then I could have done without the zany third act scenes of them foiling this drug dealer in their little madcap adventure. I would have liked to have seen more focus on him and Lily kind of mending their relationship, or him kind of building that bridge with his daughter. But all in all, pretty good movie. I'll just say we have to get back to some actual football films eventually, as opposed to
that's the thing
football
about
as a
this
backdrop.
One. It's weird. We get a lot of those films where football's the thing that fuels a plot along and is actual less football. But in this, it's almost another step removed, where it's like the passion for football fuels the plot and allows a man to become his better self without actually there being any football involved, really. Like, halfway through the film, he doesn't go to a game because he's too busy looking after his granddaughter. Like, there's no actual football in this that's fueling him, other than realize him like internalizing the brilliance of Cantona and using that as inspiration. It's like you said, like it's a weird like Tyler Durden situation. It's kind of the same thing, except for in that he realizes like a terrible version of himself. But so yeah, it's definitely, we do have to get back to actual films telling a football story, but
yeah. But I thought it was, when you look at it from the perspective of Eric Cantona is not really there, it's his version of Cantona. So you get this guy who's only speaking in proverbs for almost the entire movie, right?
Yeah.
So there is some depth to that element. But Mark, what did you think?
Yeah, just to speak to that point, it's quite funny. When he first shows up in his room, when he turns around and Cantona's there and he says, like, go and speak some French. And the only French he comes out with is "Je suis Cantona."
Yeah,
just like the most basic French that anyone would know.
That he would know himself.
Yeah, exactly. There's like a few points during the film where he either says like almost Del Boy sort of French phrases, or what sounds like just like utter nonsense that sounds like French but isn't actual words.
Yeah,
like he's never actually speaking in French because it's not. It's his projection of Cantona. I really enjoyed it. The same, the sort of finale of the film, like being familiar with Ken Loach's work, I was very much braced for the film to have a much darker ending. I did not envisage it having a happy ending at all. But yeah, it does. It kind of takes a weird left turn, and it's more. It's more like the actualization, like the realization of the meatballs and spleen characters and their whole story of like trying to raise him up and support him, rather than what it should have been, like you said, like him repairing the fractured relationships in his life. Well, he kind of does. He repairs the relationships a little bit with his stepsons, but the resolution with the love interest is a little bit abrupt, I thought.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, because it's kind of like you see them in that scene reminiscing over a cup of coffee, and it kind of, he has that dancing scene with Cantona where he's dancing and then he's back when they're kids, but that's all internalized, and they have that conversation, and she's magically brought his like blue suede shoes from when they used to enter dancing competitions. But yeah, from her perspective, it's like, what did he do to earn this big gesture happening? It's like nothing. And the same with the daughter, right? The daughter, it's seemingly enough for her to just see both her parents sat on a wall talking to each other, for her to be like, oh, okay, if you guys are cool, then we're cool too. The sons make the stepsons make a little bit more sense, because he gets Ryan out of a real grind, and then the issue is that the gangsters threaten to kill Jesse, the other son, if anything happens with that gun. So I think they recognize, oh shit, he like sorted us out, and we'd possibly both be dead if he hadn't have done that. So that makes, and that's why they go and reconcile with Lily towards the end of the film. They go to the clinic or whatever it is that she works at and talk to him. But yeah, it's enough of these things. There's just not enough time to have it all in a film. Like, it's 2 hours long already, or just shy of 2 hours long. A lot of this film is clearly his internal monologues with Cantona, and Cantona's like the star on here, kind of showing off his like oozing charisma in every scene. And
it's also it's a sort of a hallmark of Ken Loach. He's not a concise director. He likes to take his time with scenes and let scenes breathe, and most of the time that works, which is why he's such a an acclaimed director. But it does mean that sometimes there's less room for. I imagine there was probably quite a lot more left on the cutting room floor that would have filled that out, but it was already 2 hours long. But yeah, some of that stuff feels a little bit thin. But overall, I really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah, is that part of his other movies to have kind of these action scenes injected into them? I'm guessing not, from what you've been describing.
Not really. I mean, like there's moments of like short bursts of outrage and sometimes violence, but they're usually just very awkward and painful to watch. Like some of the scenes in I, Daniel Blake, but nothing like the final scene in this film. It was so much out. It was almost like full on outright comedy. That fight.
It totally was.
It's so strange. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I wonder if Yeah, so I'm wondering if they did that maybe to appeal to a wider audience, if they knew that they were going to have literally like King Cantona on the poster, right? If they are expecting to attract kind of a
maybe,
new
and they needed something
non-Ken
like
Loach
higher
audience.
stakes. Yeah,
maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, he doesn't make big. I mean, like the biggest budget film I think he made was like the Wind That Shakes the Barley, which had like Cillian Murphy in, and it looks like a much more produced film. A lot of Ken Burns' films, they're quite gritty the way that they're shot. He likes to work with a lot of non-actors as well, sometimes in the main role, sometimes like this is a lot of characters inside that weren't actors at all. But yeah, it was a bit of an odd direction for that final act. But I still enjoyed it.
It was still funny.
I will note that it's
strange.
Even with everyone wearing like Eric Cantona masks, I could still recognize Justin Morehouse.
Yeah. Which is spleen. Here's a question: Justin Morehouse. So when they're on the bus, do you think that was a Peter Kay reference when he's like on the walkie-talkie? He's like, "Where are you? Where are you?" And then he's like, "Oh, I see you." It just reminds me of that scene with the Bolton fans and everything.
Can you hear me? Hey, I can bloody see you.
He's on a bus as well. And I was like, did they write that in as a little...
Yeah.
It seemed too similar.
I was half expecting him to drop some chips.
Yes, exactly. Oh, you've dropped them, you dickhead. What when he's dropped them? But yeah, Justin Morehouse is a really funny guy. He just lights up every scene he's in. People that haven't seen Peter Kay Phoenix Nights should really watch it. His turn in that as young Kenny is brilliant.
Yeah. With the tiger face paint.
Yes.
Justin Morehouse was the FC United Manchester guy, right?
Yeah, and we didn't talk about that scene.
That's
was
one of
really
my
good scene.
favourite scenes.
Yes.
I love that scene.
Especially in the context as we're living in this post-European Super League breakdown. Like, I don't think there is a single Manchester United fan that can claim that club has the best interests at heart anymore. Like, that's completely dead.
Especially not the working class. Like.
Yes. So that seems a really good argument about... so Justin Morehouse wearing an FC United Manchester shirt. They're watching the Champions League game in the pub. And they all kind of... A couple of the fans are yelling at him, being like, "Oh, why are you wearing that? This club is... ours, it always will be." And then they have an argument about like how the roots were Newton Heath and they were tied to a railworks team and they've already abandoned those ones, like people don't care. And then the funniest bit is he gets so annoyed he leaves the pub, and then the fans he was arguing with start celebrating as if there's been a goal, and he rushes back in and everyone laughs at him. It's just really good. And this film's, it's genuinely like a really funny film. And that's
a lot of the sort of comedic scenes were less like the ones that were like slightly less outrageous than that final scene. I thought were so well done. There was that scene, the scene where right at the beginning when they're in the sorting house and they're trying to cheer him up, and they're taking turns going down and telling him jokes,
telling him really bad postman jokes,
and then the scene when they're all in and the scene when they're all in Eric's living room. And Meatballs is teaching them how to meditate. Yeah,
that scene's so good. That's when he's like, he's like in 3 mile felt. That's where he makes that quote about you can breathe out your asses. One of them says like, "What is this shit we're doing? I'm not taking my pants off." Like it's just like all those stupid preconceptions that people do have about meditating. They just let it all out, and it's so fun.
I'll be honest, like that scene in the post office. There's one guy there with the beard. I couldn't understand a single word he said. Do you know what I'm talking about?
You know what's funny?
Bald head?
You should say that. So my wife was walking past as I was watching that, and she said to me, "How the hell is Mark going to understand any of this film?" And it was that exact scene.
It was literally... I'm like, okay, I'm gonna assume he made a joke, but it wasn't as bad as When Saturday Comes, the accents. There were no subtitles in this one, so a lot of stuff I had to... So here's my conundrum. So I had to turn the volume up to understand what they were saying. Then they would start swearing, and my daughter's in the house, so I have to lower the volume quickly.
Yeah, because there's that one scene, isn't there, when he soaks the super soaker, he soaks his postman jacket, and he's like, "Fuck, shit, bollocks, fuck."
Yeah.
And it's just so loud.
So it's one hand on the remote and one hand on my notes, like constantly up and down.
That was another scene my wife had, and she was like, "I want that as my alarm when I wake up in the morning, because that's how I feel every morning."
That's just another hallmark of Ken Loach's directing, is that the characters in his films tend to talk in a slightly more like realistic conversational way, I'd say. So sometimes it is literally just mumbling.
Yeah.
And it can be hard to understand. That's one of the things that Roger Ebert picked up on in this film, in his review, is he really struggled to understand a lot of the characters.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Huh. I didn't read his review.
I can fully agree with that one.
He gave it 2 out of 4, I think I read.
Yeah.
Which is a fair score for him.
Yeah.
Okay, did you guys have any other favourite scenes or anything you wanted to highlight before we move on?
There was one scene where I just forgot his name. Was it the main guy, Henshaw? He comes in and they're trying to figure out how to outwit this guy, and he has the book called Psychos. He's like, psychos,
psychopath.
They don't give a fuck.
Yes. And like,
there's another comedic scene.
But to be fair though, why wouldn't that work? Because his book on meditating in reality did work. Like
books.
The having Eric have somebody he admired and wanted to be like worked, and then the other part of that meditation was imagining somebody. Was it something like imagining somebody you'd want to receive love from, or who could love you, or something? Yeah, and I guess that kind of works. So like, there's a theme there that, hey, let's study this psychopath, and we'll probably figure out what the hell to do. Yeah, it was a really funny scene, and they were all like, "Oh, another book and stuff," and like, I love those pub scenes. Like, they're a really accurate depiction of like an actual small local. Kind of reminds me of my old small local, the Skipton, that I used to be able to walk to. Really fun scenes. So that's pretty much that film. Without talking about any football, seems we're all pretty hot on it for a non-football film. This is one of the last films I think I got. I think it was, what the hell is that company called? Is it Love Film? When they used to send discs.
Yeah.
So I got this.
They sent out all the Film 4 films, didn't they?
Yeah.
I don't know if Love Film was a Film 4 somehow associated with them in some way.
Yeah.
You guys didn't have Columbia House? Is that like a North American thing?
I've never heard of it. So.
No.
You've never heard of Columbia House?
No.
We had we had Film 4 before Netflix, when they used to send DVDs out. We had Love Film. Yeah, Love Film.
It's a rental service though.
Yeah.
So
they would mail it out to you, like how Netflix used to send discs out, or what's that, Redbox?
No. Columbia House would be like you get 30 movies for 1 cent each.
Oh, right.
But then you got to pay for another 12 of them, and then those next 12 movies are like $45 each or something ridiculous.
There used to be a lot of book clubs that were like that back in the day.
Yeah.
They did CDs
and
as well.
like record clubs as well.
Yeah, and it's you paid way over RRP for the rest of their books. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then they send you one each month. You end up keeping it, so you end up with garbage. Yeah.
That's super. Okay. Well,
one of the actors, I think his name is Gerard Kearns.
Ryan.
Is it Ryan?
The son who's in a bit of trouble.
Yeah, so I looked him up. I was looking at the names and all that, and he popped up. So he's Ian in the original Shameless.
Oh, yes, he is. Yeah.
And it made so much sense because I've only watched the US version of it. But as soon as it came up, like, that guy is the same character to a T, almost.
Yes. I'd forgotten about that. Yeah, he was in the UK Shameless, yeah.
Is that worth watching?
Yeah, I think I didn't watch it all the way through. I think I got the feeling I'd stopped watching it, just dragged on a little bit too long. Like English shows don't drag on as long as American, right? And sometimes you see a dip in quality.
That's not with the US version.
6-7 years or something. But I watched like the first 3 or 4 seasons of the UK Shameless are like brilliant. Not sure how well it's aged, but yeah, if you enjoyed the US one, I'd recommend it.
US had the same problem where it went 9 seasons and the first, I think, 6 or 7 were good, and then dramatic dip in quality after that.
Okay, so that's going to conclude our talk for now about looking for Eric. So we're going to go back to some of our features we kind of had last time, but we're going to kind of talk about them now, just so that if you were only here for the movie stuff, you've already got all that. So number ones at the time of this release, top of the global billboard was Boom Boom Pow by the Black Eyed Peas, and top of the box office was The Hangover. So guys, what do you think of
first one?
Yeah, the first one, the opening of the trilogy. It's interesting, right? When you don't see films like The Hangover now, because if you actually go back and watch it, it's kind of aged bad, even though it only came out in 2009. There's a lot of like slurs and stuff we wouldn't see in movies right now anymore. Or certainly we wouldn't see them in like a Hollywood blockbuster because it just wouldn't get that far. It wouldn't hit a critical mass. It wouldn't have the names it has in it either. But yeah, that spawned a very successful trilogy of movies that I think sequentially got worse as they went on. I didn't mind Hangover 2, but I didn't really enjoy The Hangover 3.
They managed to make the same film 3 times.
Yeah, essentially, yeah.
Yeah.
Fair play.
Yeah, I loved part 1. Part 1 came out just as I was about to get married, and I actually had my bachelor party in Las Vegas. So the whole thing was just like, serendipitous. We loved it.
And then, what are your guys' opinions on the Black Eyed Peas? They put out a lot of catchy tunes, but they're mostly trash, in my opinion.
I have no opinions on the Black Eyed Peas.
I could go either way on them.
Yeah. I think there's...
What's that Robert California quote about them from the US Office?
Oh.
It's like, they're like rock music for people who don't like rock. They're pop for people who don't like pop.
Something like that, yeah.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that was the number ones at the time. We're going to talk about football at the time now. So, Manchester United were the champions of England, but they did get beaten by Barcelona in the Champions League final Barcelona won it for the third time, beating them 2-0 and becoming the first Spanish team ever to do a treble. In MLS, Real Salt Lake were halfway through a season that would see them crowned MLS champions for the first time. Newcastle United, in honour of you, Mark, were relegated after Joe Kinnear dipped. He actually had a heart attack and left club legend Alan Shearer to pick up the pieces. And in Portsmouth Watch, this was ultimately Portsmouth's last successful season in the Premier League. We followed up our FA Cup win with the UEFA Cup campaign and finished 14th in the league. This was a brilliant year in some regards because we had Peter Crouch and Jermaine Defoe up front until Jermaine Defoe pissed off back to Spurs in the January transfer window.
And then he promptly went broke, right?
Into TFC, yeah.
He came to TFC first.
Yeah.
2009 was when TFC was within a hair of making the playoffs for the first time.
Oh, okay.
They went down to Giant Stadium on the last match on the schedule. They needed a draw, and instead they got beat. I think it was 4-0 or 5-0. It was something terrible. And then they did a few locker room interviews afterwards, which is a distinctly like North American thing, I think.
They do it in non-league football in England a little bit. They do like Touchline that has that same vibe.
It's weird when coaches come over and managers have a big problem with it, letting cameras in. A few of them had tried to stop that, but it's just part of the broadcast here. But they went into the locker room, they interviewed a few of the guys, and then that's when things started to pop up that there was something wrong with this team because we had first started in 2007. And we just kind of rode that wave of being happy to have a team. And then by 2009, those like problems started to bubble to the surface. And then that's when it kind of all went downhill from there. So it was a big turning point in TFC's short history.
And then that ultimately led them on the route to where they ended up being a challenging team, I guess. Or do you think if they'd have made the playoffs then? Well, no, there was a long time. There was a long decline then, actually, yes. Yeah,
that would have just hidden the problems. And then in 2012, we had, I think, an 0-9 start. And that's when we have the famous Danny Kuverman's quote of, we're the worst team in the world. And then we brought in a new GM. At that point, they brought in Jermaine Defoe, the bloody big deal. That was supposed to change things for the better. Defoe got homesick. He left. Brought in Josie Altidore, eventually Javinko, and then that's when we kind of became top shelf in MLS.
There's another
model club.
Here. Somewhere in that period, John Carver was manager, and he used to be Newcastle manager as well.
Newcastle manager, yes.
See, it's all linked up somehow.
How did he ever get another job?
Thing.
I think on that 2009 club, we might have had Laurent Robert as well for
we've talked about
4 or 5 matches.
Who played for all of our clubs, actually. He played for Portsmouth as well for half a season.
Beauty.
Any memorable moments of that relegation battle for Newcastle that you want to talk about?
I mean, no. I mean, this was the point where it felt like Mike Ashley was beginning to be spiteful. It wasn't just he was running the club badly. He was like, do you know what? I'm going to make decisions to really upset the fans deliberately. So he brings in Joe Kinnear, who'd been out in the wilderness for forever, was a dinosaur, didn't understand modern football tactics. He was awful. He got lots of play. He I think it was his first interview. He swore a lot. He called Charles Nzogbia Charles Insomnia. He called Johan Kabay Johan Kebab. Then he was awful. Put us in the relegation zone. Promptly had a heart attack and pissed off. And then club legend Alan Shearer was sent out, having no managerial experience, was sent out to die. And yeah, we went down.
And you feel like he's been tarnished ever since then, Alan Shearer, because when England went out of the 2016 Euros to Iceland and people were angry, like Alan Shearer said, I would love to be a part of the coaching setup, or at least the help pick the next coach or anything to do with it. They didn't approach him for it. He's stuck at the BBC now as a pundit. Like I think he's just tarnished completely by that, and it's not really fair.
He did the best he could with the resources and the experience that he had, which was no experience and no resources, and a team that was broken. He did the best that he could, but it wasn't enough to keep us up.
Yeah,
it wasn't like a complete plummet. We went down on the last day.
Yeah, so
thanks to Villa.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, it was a painful season, and not the last painful season I had to endure under Mike Ashley's tenure, and he's still there, like a tick.
Yeah, he just can't get rid of.
No.
Okay.
I have to say though, I'm kind of glad we didn't sell the club last year, because as bad as Mike Ashley is, he's not a human rights violating war criminal, the guy who nearly bought the club. So
yeah, that is very true.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we get to Footy Flicks and the ranking, we are going to play a little game called Play Your Players Right. So Mark Hamer, you're in a very lucky position as our guest. You're going to try and beat our score, which is currently at 3.
Okay.
So this is a simple game. I'm going to tell you a stat that Eric Cantona holds, and then you're going to tell me if the next player is higher or lower than that stat, and then subsequently go through, and we will see how many you can get and whether you can set a new record. So you get 1 for free. So you've got at least 1 point as you come out of the door. And that 1 point is Eric Cantona. So the stat I'm going to ask you, Eric Cantona scored 81 goals for Manchester United in 180 appearances. So I'm going to tell you a player name, and I want to know if they scored more or less goals than Eric Cantona. So
in the same number of appearances, or just overall?
Overall in their career.
Okay, all right.
So the first one I have is Dwight York. Higher or lower goals than Eric Cantona?
I'm going to say lower.
That is correct. He scored 65 goals in 152 games. Okay, next, let's flick the
Still pretty good.
Yep, still pretty good. The next we have is a more recent player, Marcus Rashford. So still playing today. I should point out this is up until... Not that I don't want to affect you either way. Oh, no, it's up to current day. You're all good.
Okay.
So, so higher or lower than Dwight York, 65?
Lower?
I'm afraid not. Marcus Rashford has scored 88 goals in all competitions in Manchester United in 271 games. Seems insane when you consider how young he is, but then he broke into the team when he was like 17, right?
Yeah,
he was smashing goals in for fun in the Europa League, I remember.
He spends so much time out on the wing, you don't think he scored that many goals.
No. But even so, this is complete digression, but everyone's picking their England team for the Euros, and very few people are picking Rashford in their starting lineup. You look at his season, he scored 11 goals and 11 assists. That's not bad for a player out on the wing with lots of other attacking options. He's done a pretty good job.
Yeah, he's a good player.
So anyway, so you didn't beat the record. You only got 2. Sorry, Mark, you're still the reigning champion with 3.
Beauty.
Okay, so Footy Flicks. So let's talk about the football in this movie. There isn't a hell of a lot.
No.
It's all basically highlight reels of Eric Cantona's best moments. One thing that is very evident about watching Eric Cantona is just the way he moved around the pitch and his positional play and stuff. And there's a couple of scenes where Eric Bishop is talking to him about that. He's describing goals, and he's like, there was that one against, I think he says Villa, where you saw the ball coming back towards you. You marked the trajectory, you took a step back, and you hit it perfectly. And he talks about the last minute goal he scored in the FA Cup final against Liverpool, where he's just at the edge of the box in the exact right time.
Yeah, volley.
Liverpool have players on the line, and he hits it in the exact right point. And so I think they do there's no actual footage to watch or any actual acted out scenes, but we get really good footage and really good like breakdown of those scenes and like what they meant to a fan at the time. And then sort of a breakthrough in the film, I guess, a little bit is Eric's saying, well, what was your favorite like moment in the pitch? It's got to have been this goal. And he says, no. It was a pass, and it was a pass to set up Dennis Irwin, a Irish left back who was not renowned for his goal scoring, but did score the odd belter. And he kind of says to Eric, sometimes it's about love and about giving, and that's one of the breakthroughs for Eric's in the film. So we almost see football, as I was trying to describe before, football not being that plot device, but still kind of is a plot point for a character's mental health journey.
Yeah. Relying on your teammates.
Yeah.
Relying on your friends.
Yeah. And like how giving something can help people. And he kind of takes that attitude with the sons and stuff instead of yelling at them. Well, he does take stuff away from them. He takes the TV away and stuff, but it's ultimately to nurture that relationship. It doesn't seem like it at the time, but he is.
I remember that scene when they walk in and the guys are just sitting there watching porn.
Yeah.
I don't know anybody who actually did that or does that.
No, I've never understood that depiction of watching porn together. It's like I've never been inclined to do that, but these kids are. Anyway, so what are the highlights for the football scenes for you guys? Were there any goals? It's kind of hard to judge.
I mean, they were all fantastic goals. I mean, I like have no love for United at all, but Eric Cantona was just so watchable.
Yeah,
like there aren't really many players like, because he was like he had decent pace, but he was not particularly fast. Yep. He was not particularly tricky with his feet. He was sort of like the sort of player you don't see very often these days. That I've always had a soft spot for players like Dimitar Berbatov, who are just very, very, I don't want to say lazy, but like almost laid back. I mean, he would push when he needed to, obviously, but he was just always in the right place at the right time. And you half expected him to just be standing there smoking a cigarette and just be where he needed to be. And it was there were times when he'd score an important goal, and there was a couple of clips in the film where like the Liverpool goal, where his like celebration reaction was obviously like he just lost control and he was amazed that he scored it. But his like usual sort of score a goal and then he would just turn to the crowd.
They showed that one against Sunderland.
Present himself.
Stoic.
Are you not entertained?
He was I don't think we get as many players like this anymore because football's become so much more athletic, and so many teams rely on like a high press and stuff where you need all 11 men pressing, and to have a player like this is kind of a luxury that I don't think you get anymore.
You get those.
Sorry, go ahead.
You get those like flashes of brilliance, and then paired with the like kind of theatricality from Zlatan, where he just pulls off these amazing mid-air splits, and then he recognizes it on the spot and just kind of plays to the crowd like, "Are you entertained?" Right? Yeah, you're right. Like the players who are showing these flashes of brilliance are almost fans of themselves who point to the name on the back of the shirt and just dance around a bit. Right? Nothing like Cantona, where he scores and then he knows he's the coolest guy in the room. Yeah, right. Totally. And he plays it.
And he was. Yeah, like unquestionably, like he had his own demons. He had his own. He had problems with aggression, but they don't make players like him anymore.
No, so many players are like so media trained to death. Like you would never, the seagull quote that gets referenced in this film. Like if you look up that, it's just utter nonsense. He's talking about a seagull going around a trawler or something. It's
when the seagulls follow the trawler, it's because they think sardines will be thrown into the sea.
Yeah.
And he made it up on the spot, and he doesn't even know what it means. They've asked him later on.
Yeah.
He's just kind of like, I made it up on the spot, right?
Yeah. And
is there a footballer as cool as Cantona? I know you guys hate him, but like you can respect that. The total package around him, like the Nike adverts.
Oh, I used to hate him.
The Kung Fu kick, Return of the King match, all of it.
The fact that I don't know. Actually, he does.
There are players, I think. There are players who have come close to it and probably think they're as cool as him, like Zlatan, but then they're not quite on that level. No, I don't honestly. I don't think there has been a player that's been quite. No, it's why he was like the perfect player for the perfect character for that role. Is that I can't think of any other footballer, especially from like the 90s, who would have worked.
And it's just that presence he has. Somehow, as a footballer, he has the same presence. And he's done a bunch of acting outside of this too, it's worth noting.
Yeah.
He's been in a whole bunch of films. I think he's done like theatre performances and stuff as well. He was on 2010 stage production called Faced with Paradise. I don't know if you guys saw, there's also a detective show with him that's on Netflix. It's a Netflix original. It's in French. It's called Inhuman Resources.
That's a bad name.
Yeah, it's a really weird name. But yeah, he's in that. I think it's obviously translated. It's like a mini series. He went on to manage the beach soccer team and play for them, and they won the beach soccer World Cup, I believe.
I think he was brand ambassador for the New York Cosmos.
Was he like technical director for them or something like that?
Yeah,
there was no club,
whatever that means.
There literally was no club at the time. I don't even think they were in the like 4th division of U.S. soccer at that time. They just plastered him on a bunch of billboards in Times Square.
But yeah, he's a cool guy.
Yeah.
I'll never forget on his he got dropped from the national team by, I think it was Henri Michel, his name, and when he was asked about the decision, he said he thought it was a bag of shit. It's just so many, like I said, you get all these players, they're so media trained to death, and it's boring. A lot of clubs put the same players forward every time for media duties. It's just so boring and vanilla. That's why the England channel during tournaments is really good now, because they run a thing called the Lion's Den, and you get to actually see the players. And like, my wife doesn't care to know who any of the players are, but she'll watch that show because you get a bit of personality out of them, and it helps you connect with them a little bit. But that's such a effort to bring that forward in the modern era, whereas for him, he just said what he wanted and didn't give a crap. Kicked people when he wanted, famously, that fan as well. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall in the United dressing room at any point during his time there.
There will never be that mystique again, right, where he just drops a random proverb about seagulls, or even when he had I think he won like the FIFA, I don't remember which award it was, but he made some quote, like he made like a King Lear quote about like wanton boys to the, like fly to the wanton boys, we are to the gods, right?
Yeah.
In the face of FIFA telling them that like, you're going to abuse us players for every cent that you can get out of us and then toss us away. On the FIFA stage as he's accepting an award, and then they just clap in his face like, yeah, okay, you're Cantona, we can't say anything to you. But so somebody like that these days would make a quote about the seagulls, and then 10 minutes later you'd see them on Instagram grabbing McDonald's. You know what I mean? So all the mystique of it would be gone. You could never have that again.
Totally. So one of a kind we will never see again. So that rounds out a slightly different Footy Flicks due to the lack of any actual footy, but it speaks to him as a footballer.
Yeah. One last point about the Footy Flicks in this movie, how I think it's so important, is that even if you don't know who Eric Cantona is, they set up his character within those like 3 or 4 minutes of the Return of the King highlights, and just the best goals that he scored. So even if you're not a footy watcher, you can immediately tell that this guy is a legend.
Something, yeah.
And then from there, you can watch the rest of the movie, and maybe you've never even heard of Manchester United, but you can appreciate who this guy is and how much kind of how revered he is by Eric Bishop. So I think it does a great job of that.
When Eric says to him, he says something like you're a man or something like that. And he says, I'm not a man. I'm Cantona.
Yeah, it's so good. And then he smiles after that, and it almost feels like he broke for a second then, because he's like, that's fucking ridiculous. I just said so yeah, really good. Okay, so next up we have rankings. This is actually going to be very difficult. So this is only our second episode of the season. And the last movie we ranked was The Divine Ponytail. So in this instance, Mark Hamer, we would usually be asking the guests who, if it's a film that they're particularly interested in, would be to argue their cause and help me and Mark where we're going to rank the film. But I don't necessarily think we need to do that, because I feel like this film's going to rank higher than The Divine Ponytail, because we were both very lukewarm on that film. There's way, when you consider how unpassionate that Divine Ponytail was ultimately, this does a way more better job of making you care, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I feel comfortable with saying that this is the best football movie of season 3 so far. So ranking.
Do you think by a wide margin?
By a wide margin. I think there's a long way between this and The Divine Ponytail. Personally.
Yeah, it beats my heart because there was so much potential in Divine Ponytail.
It was one we were super looking forward to, knowing, hey, it's coming to Netflix, a bunch of people are going to watch it, and then it's actually, maybe they shouldn't bother.
And a lot of people did watch it. I was surprised by how many people reached out and said, I watched it, I was disappointed by it. So
yeah, and it was trending on that top 10 thing that Netflix do.
Yeah.
So it was popular that first weekend, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so our rankings so far for this season are: in second place, The Divine Ponytail, and in first place, Looking for Eric. Once again, Mark Hamer, thank you so much for joining us today. Our first ever guest. Where can people find you on the internet if they want to check out things that you do?
Well, they can find me alongside you on the Laps Gamer Radio podcasts. You can find me on Twitter at Basement Shaxx. You can find me on Twitch and Basement Shaxx as well when I do stream. Yeah, that's about it.
Okay. Where
Very cool.
People find you, Mark?
I am on Instagram at A3Football and on Twitter at MarkA3.
And I am ADucky84 on Twitch and Joypads for Goalposts on Twitter. You can also check out that YouTube channel. I did upload that video of that Knockout City, which is a dodgeball game. Mark actually joined me for that. It's a pretty fun game.
I believe when this episode drops, we'll be in the midst of E3 news, bombshell after bombshell, hopefully. You guys have anything planned for that on Labs Gamer?
I don't know. We probably could, because they're at a more reasonable time. Well, for us, over this side of the Atlantic, they're at a more reasonable time this time. There's no 2-3 o'clock in the morning press conferences, but there's also 5 press conferences, and that's it.
Yeah, it's not
not a lot.
Craziness.
Yeah.
But yeah, check out
about it for sure.
We'll definitely have a podcast where we talk about it. For sure.
Yeah. Cool.
And finally, don't forget to hit us up on Twitter, Matchday Matinee, and subscribe to the YouTube channel and do all that jazz. And so until next time, from the terraces to the theatre of dreams, we are Matchday Matinee. Thank you and good night.